makes you angry, then the shoe fits you perfectly. If I talk about the sheeple and it makes you angry, then you are one. Simple as that. Because if you're not, it won't make you angry, because you know who you are, don't you? Don't you, folks? You see, what's wrong with all of this is there has never been any consent of the governed to allow these plans to be implemented. Russia is not moving away from communism. That is total propaganda. And it's just for the sheeple of the world. The New World Order is going to be what the communists have pushed for since their inception, for they're just another branch of the old mystery school. And that is total world domination by international socialism. Can't you see it? It's as plain as the nose on your face if you will just look. See, unless we can make you understand what is going on with the treaty process, you can still lose your firearms, folks. Bernadine Smith furnished this complete report. The research we've done a long time ago. I wrote about this in my book. There's a whole chapter on the United Nations. Bernadine Smith. And she says this, folks, and I quote, she says, quote, "I wrote the legislation to stop the process as the first disarmament treaty, the INF Treaty number 100-11, 1988, was being enacted. State Senator Donald Rogers introduced it in the California legislature, but Senator Roberti and Senator Petrus killed the bill in committee. SJR 42. Unquote. Now, folks, go to the library first thing tomorrow. Even if you have to take off from work. You see, this is more important. Believe me, it is. And if you like to write to Bernadine Smith, it's Post Office Box 1776. Post Office Box 1776. Hanford. That's spelled Hanford. Hanford, California. 93232. That's Post Office Box 1776. Hanford, California. 93232. Now, folks, I'm going to go through this again. And if you are one of the ones who got it all down the first time, you don't need to listen anymore. You go to the library right now. Turn off your radio and go. I don't want to hold you up, folks. If your library is open, go do it now. If not, get a good night's sleep, get up in the morning and go do it. I'm going to go through this once again for those of you who may not have written all of this down, because this is a homework assignment. I expect it to be completed. In fact, you will complete it. If you don't listen to this show anymore. We don't need you. Go to your library. Get the United States Code books. There are 25 books in the set. They're reddish brown in color. They're printed by the Government Printing Office in Washington, D.C. Okay? Go to Volume 9. Open it up. The page numbers are set in the center near the middle binding. The section numbers are along the edges. Turn to page 554. Here you will find Public Law 87-297. Read it. It calls for the United States to eliminate its armed forces. This law was signed into law by John F. Kennedy in 1961. And every single president since has worked to enact its provisions, bar none. Now turn to page 555. Page 555. Here you will find the definition of what the government means by, quote, disarmament, unquote. Find it on the lower right-hand side of the page. The disarmament calls for the elimination of our armed forces. It also calls for the elimination of weapons of all kinds. This is a law. You see, all of this tomfoolery in Congress is for nothing. It's just to get the public approval of what they've already passed into law that's going to be done. You see, the laws have already been passed to take away everybody's firearms. All they have to do is get brave enough to do it. And I don't think They are. In fact, I know they're not. But that's what the Randy Weaver case, and that's what's happening in Waco, Texas. You see, the Randy Weaver case was a shock test, and the Trojan horse Bogarts was involved with it from the beginning. For he began talking about Randy Weaver on KBEG, the Billy Goodman Show in Las Vegas in early 1990. He also talked about it at Freedom Call 90, talked about Randy Weaver. But that's not what he said after the incident occurred, is it? Then, folks, turn to page 557. Here you will find it stated as item a, quote, control, reduction, and elimination of armed forces, unquote. And as item D, quote, elimination of armed forces, unquote. What you need to know is that your armed forces are being eliminated from national control, which in turn wipes out our sovereignty as a nation. In 2 stages, folks, we shall have no more Army, no more Navy, and no more Air Force. In the 3rd stage, we shall have a zero military. Now, before stage 1 closes, according to the plan, all citizen-owned guns will be banned. According to the plan, it's in these documents that I'm giving you now. I get excited. I wave my arm around. It hit the microphone. That's the noise that you heard. Public Law 87-297 is further explained in the State Department document called Publication 7277. Your librarian can also furnish you a copy. Ask the librarian to get you a copy of, and this is important because this is the unabridged version, folks. It's called, quote, The Blueprint for the Peace Race, unquote. It is a 35-page booklet printed by the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency as publication number 4, General Series 3. That's publication number 4, General Series 3, released May 1962, and you must have that date. Publication number 4 is the unabridged version of State Department document 7277, and that's why you need to read it. Now, both of these books explain how our military is to be reduced to 2.1 million men. China and the Soviets are to reduce to that level also. At this point, folks, we are in stage number 1, at which time we are to transfer on a permanent basis 1/2 of our armed forces to be merged with the Russian and Chinese armies. Now go look at the new Air Force uniforms. You'll see that all insignia stating United States or U.S. has been removed. Look at the other uniforms and you'll see that it is no longer on our uniforms. U.S. has been removed from our uniforms. Look at the equipment, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and shortly aircraft. You will see that the insignia of the United States is being removed from our equipment. You already know that our armed forces are acting as the police force for the United Nations at the present time. What I'm telling you is not baloney, and that's why you must go to the library and look at it yourself. If you don't, I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear anything from you. Now, listen to this, folks. The person in charge of the merged armies must, by agreement and by the United Nations Charter, always be a Russian. What does that tell you? The world's smaller nations turn 100% of their armies over to the same Undersecretary of the Security Council in stage number 2. George Bush and Admiral William J. Crowe referred to this process as being, quote, in transition, unquote. Now turn to page 558. Remember, volume 9, page 558. On this page, in volume 9 of the United States Code, read, quote, policy formulation, unquote. The directives there, written in 1963 to pacify objectors, because a lot of people objected to this law in 1963, are supposedly to restrain anyone from disarmament, reducing or limiting our armaments, or taking guns from the people unless it is pursuant to the treaty-making power of the President, or if it is authorized by further legislation by the Congress. Well, you know, Congress is repeatedly introducing this legislation and passing it on an ongoing basis, and what they don't tell you in the law here